So we're up to Simon 74, Ein Dalet of the Orchos Chaim, of the Rosh, and this is the beginning of Yom Chamishi. Ein Dalet, Alter Beli Smoach. Don't be too happy. It's very not Hasidish. L'schor ruach chayecha, and uh, remember that your life is just wind, and literally wind, the breathing in and out, and it's like a wind which eventually blows out. A ton of afar, you created from dirt, vacharischa rima, and your end is going to be for the maggots. Now, this used to work very well for people. Obviously, the Chazal full of remembering Yom HaMisa, remembering the Chibut HaKever, and the Rima Tolea, and all those things. I think when the Baal Shem Tov came along, he made a revolution. He said this doesn't work for this generation, and certainly for later generations. That's why we focus, on the contrary, much more on the simcha as opposed to the potential atzvus of being 6 feet under and being eaten up by the worms and maggots. Even though that's the mitzvah, it's going to happen, but obviously the extreme statement of Rav Nachman, mitzvah gedol lios b'simcha tamid, stands in, for most people in contradiction to this. Obviously, if you're a high madrega, you could have a simcha which is special and enhanced by your yira, like the Tan of Elio says, and you're racing mitoch simchasi v'samachni mitoch hirasi, and the precious nature of life can make you much more happy to possess it, as long as you do possess it. But most people, it's a kind of either or, and therefore the Chassidim came along and said that for our generation, since we have sources in Chazal, which can be construed either way, we will take the derech that simcha is more effective in motivating us than the outer belly smoach, not to be sad, chas v'shalom, but the outer belly smoach which the Rosh recommends. Eine altomar shum mitzvah eseos olamocha shema loti panel asos. Well, don't say any. This is a power from Pirkei. Don't say any mitzvah. I'm going to do it tomorrow because maybe you won't find the time to do it. If you the thing is, if you intended to do a mitzvah today, then you should do it today, no matter what goes wrong. In other words, if you happen to realize at the end of the day that you didn't do what you were supposed to do, so unless the circumstances are dire, you shouldn't put it off till tomorrow, because that eventually leads to a disruption of the entire commitment and the entire series when it's of mitzvahs, when it's trying to establish as a pattern, as a habit, as a program. And my grandfather, Zatzal's correspondence with Tel's Yeshiva, one of the expectations of the alumni of Yeshiva who represent Yeshiva on the highest level was to learn an hour a day, come what may, and even if one gets very late and one didn't have time, to sit down and learn an hour a day, no matter what, every day of one's life. And the point was that this is the ultimate fulfillment of carrying the banner of Torah, that it is never forsaken, even if the circumstances are difficult. Ayvav, al tiparei mi higayon chachma musar. Do not separate yourself from the higayon. Now, higayon can mean to contemplate. To rasa yega yomam valayla, but it also can mean to analyze. As we know, the higayon means logic. So it's kind of an oxymoron, according to Rabbi Yisrael's derech, that Musar is much more emotional than it is analytical. But even Rabbi Yisrael held that there's two types of Musar: the analytical Musar and the emotional Musar, and you need both. And the Rosh is saying here, do not separate yourself from the analytical Musar. And you should put yourself at the dust of the dirt. You should make yourself dusty with the dirt at the feet of Talmidei Chachamim, and then you will become wise. This is an important point. Reb Chaim Volozhin has a very unique shot in that Mishnah, which the Rosh is not going with, which is Hisabek Bafarig Chachamim. It's from Loshen Vayavik Ish Imo, which it says by Yaakov Avinu, and finding the Star of Esav, and it means to wrestle, and therefore says the Chaim Talmud is supposed to wrestle with his Rebbe, not literally, figuratively. No, it's to challenge his Rebbe's statements and to question them and to wrestle with him, and that way you get to the truth. He said, but I have to do it with humility, sitting as if you're sitting in the dust at his feet. So this has to do with both parts: the Yigoyin Chachma Musar and the Tisavik Ba'Farag Chachamim. They, whether you take it like simple pshat or like Reb Chaim Volozhner, it means that a person has to be analytical and challenging, and only when a person learns that way can the Torah be significantly expanding, mind expanding, and uplifting. You know, it could say perhaps is Derech Hatzachus that says Av Chachmasi Amdali. I forget which Tana or Murder says Torasi shel lamadati ba'af amdali. The Torah which I learned with af, and normally understand this to mean despite all circumstances which made it difficult to learn, I would nevertheless persevere and learn, and that Torah was the Torah which was most retained by me, which makes sense. Something learned to have challenge gets retained, but we can learn to say slightly differently. That Torasi Shalamaditi Ba'af, meaning that in the like we say Charon Af, right? And this would be Torah learned with Rischa D'Oraisa, with a fervor and a challenge and a contention and a clash that Af, so to speak, Tamid Chachamim, when as we know that when the base medrash is Soinim Zed Zed, then when they leave base medrash Oavim Zed Zed. So that is this idea that sometimes one has to, well, not sometimes, one's an analysis, which requires profound and sometimes paradoxical and contradictory thinking and resolution. That in both Chachma and Musar, and in learning from a Rebbe, these are ways in which one can become smart. Tischaken. Ein Zayd al taniach derech Chasidus. Do not forsake the way of Chasidus. Avabish maligim alav imlecha, and they mock you and scoff you. Val tebosh parmes, and don't be embarrassed to do a mitzvah. So obviously, derech Chasidus here means that a person is doing things L'Shem Shamayim, of course, which is not always fortunately the case. More lifni mishur asadin, more with a chumrah, but chumrah, of course, L'Shem Shamayim, which you can actually explore in my article called Good Chumras, which is online. You can Google it. So, a person should, that level of Chasidus is a person's personal level of Avodas Hashem. And it's a person's personal level of greatness. So therefore, if that Chasidus is something which other people scoff at, you should not pay attention, and you should never be embarrassed if you're doing that which is right. Do not close your hand from giving constantly to poor people and downtrodden people, and also give to your relatives. That is considered to be the first line of giving is to one's relatives. Because even in Yerushalmi, if it's in Peah, and somewhere in Israel, it says that a man has a mitzvah b'ibsarcha al tisalein towards his ex-wife. There's even an ex-wife. In that case, in Yerushalmi, she was married to somebody else. There's a mitzvah to give her tzedakah first, because she's still called b'sarcha. So rather than what we would think would be the normal, perhaps, response that one's ex-wife, one's ex-spouse is not in the first line of tzedakah. No, it's the first line of tzedakah, just like one's parents, children, brothers, sisters, etc. Ein tes al tacher larutz l'maher Al tacher, do not be late. La roots, you should run. Maher, and be quick. L'achin livneim, and prepare before these aniyim and yoinim. Shulchan v'lechem, bread and table and bread. Kishema hem re'evim, because they may be hungry. In other words, we have shades of Nachum Ish Gamzu, who fault himself for not giving the food quickly enough to the person, the ani who died. So, if you're trying to be mative with people the way you're supposed to, especially the poor and downtrodden one, you have to have in mind their physical needs. Like Rabbi Salanter said, that another person's gashmius is my ruchnius. I have to be concerned with their gashmius as part of my avodas Hashem and my ruchnius. So therefore, you have to take that into account and put out the bread and food as quickly as possible if there's a possibility that they are famished. My great uncle, Rabbi Dova Levi Holtzberg Zatzal, told me, and I forget what sefer he said it from. I don't even know the recollection. It's 40 some odd years ago. He said that in one of the Sfarim it says that one of the ways in which you're native to people who are your guests who come to your house is by telling them where the bathroom is, right, when they come in. So they shouldn't be embarrassed and should be able to go in case they have to go. So it's something along the same lines as what the Rosh is saying here. Pay. Don't be lazy to bring your meiser to the treasury. That which you the money you give in secret curtails the anger in the world. So obviously we're not in meiser in that sense, but although in Eretz Yisrael is meiser only, but he's not referring to that. But he's referring to money which you give to the community fund, and it's not public. You bring your money to the Otzar, to the place, the pushka, they put it in, and nobody knows. And that is something which is on a higher level, as we know, to not to get any covet out of what one gives. And it's a very high madrega to reach, because human beings naturally seek covet. But this is Matan Baseser has a specific capacity to diminish the anger in the world, because I guess Mida connect Mida. If you hide your deeds, HaKadosh Baruch Hu hides his anger. Okay? Don't look at the people who are lower down than you and say, okay, look how good I'm doing, right? Better than those guys. Now always look at the guys who are above you and say, oh, I have a long ways to go. I'm not where I should be. Yeah. Pay base. Never lift up your hand against your friend. Even if you curse your father and mother in front of you. Wow, it's an amazing statement. That your equanimity, your shtavus, is the primary midah. It's a difficult midah, but it's the primary midah that one can accomplish in this world. And it doesn't matter anything which happens in the world. And it goes back of that you shouldn't be, to what we said before, you shouldn't be embarrassed to do a mitzvah. That everything should be equanimity. That everything should be, if I'm okay inside, it doesn't matter what happens outside. It's the highest madrigal midah a person can reach, and it's a very difficult midah to reach. Above us, I think it was, says that somebody once came to join the special group of Avodah Hashem, people I think who were striving for Nevuah, if I recall correctly the story, and the head of the group said, my son, if somebody curses you, do you get angry? And he said, I get angry inside, but I never do anything. And the head of the Chabura said, you're not ready to join us yet, because during the Chabura, you have to have not only not respond to what angers you, but not to feel the anger, because that person, it's irrelevant. If internally you're okay, it's not relevant what he says, and if internally you're not okay, it's also not relevant what he says, and it's your issue. So a person always, I say to my students very often that I don't know how often, but I say to them, if I determine my stature based on whether you listen to me or didn't listen to me, I'd be in trouble. But that's not what determines my stature, and to myself and my self-esteem. So the person's Baruch Hashem, that usually gets them to listen to somewhat, but that person's inner essence is what counts, and therefore whatever a person does in front of him should not cause or provoke an external, but also an internal reaction.